promising reform. We're all 3 deaths. Let's get some further insight on the situation there. Edward Djerejian is a former U.S. ambassador to Syria and Israel, and he joins us now from Houston, Texas. Thanks for being with us, sir. What did you make of Bashar al-Assad's 3rd speech since the unrest began when you heard it?
The speech, I believe, did not go far enough in basically showing the intent of the regime to actually move forward on real reforms. It was more of establishing committees, establishing a national dialogue, engaging in secondary steps. And I think the major critique of the speech came really from a neighboring country, Turkey, in which basically the president of Turkey, Mr. Gül, basically said that President Bashar al-Assad should step up to the plate and announce that he's establishing a multi-party democratic system in Syria and that he and his regime will abide by the results. That has not happened.
So can the United States do something? Does it have any leverage? And if it does have leverage, what should it do?
Well, I think the United States cannot manage this internal crisis in Syria. I think it would be an illusion to think that the United States can have a direct impact on what's happening in the streets of Syria and in the rural countryside. But what the United States can do is, in a multilateral effort with key allies in Europe, getting Russia and China and certainly Turkey, which I think plays a major role in terms of the influence that Turkey can have on Bashar al-Assad and his regime, we can conduct a multilateral effort to get the Syrian regime to get ahead of this whole popular movement for a change. The point is that every day that...
I was going to say, Russia and China have already expressed their opposition to even the resolution condemning. Just a condemnation at the UN Security Council is already being opposed by Russia and China. So how much can countries such as France, the UK, and the United States hope for?
Well, I think the multilateral effort is very important, and Prime Minister Putin just came out with a statement within the last 24 hours condemning what's happening in Syria, which is a move in the direction of the United States and the EU. So I wouldn't give up on an international coalition of forces that can bring pressure on the regime. But the key factor here is that Syria is moving forward into a new political era. That cannot be stopped. The path to that new political endgame can continue to be bloody and repressive, as we're seeing in Syria today, with the government repressing the protesters and pro-loyalists to the regime supporting the regime. It can be a prolonged agony, but the end game, I think, is pretty clear. Syria is not going to be the same. It has to evolve toward a more pluralistic and hopefully more representative country.
So, and by the way, your Robert Ford, who's the current U.S. ambassador to Syria, there were reports his movements were restricted to Damascus. He did make a brief trip to the northern part of the country. He went to Jisr al-Shuhur. Yes. You know Syria. You were an ambassador there. Do you think this regime is days are numbered?
I think this regime is showing a real limitation of its ability to respond to the forces of change in its own country. And therefore, in that respect, I think if it does not come forward with a dramatically new opening and a willingness that is demonstrable to lead a political transition, its days are numbered if it does not do that. I think that is key. I remember a discussion I had with President Bashar al-Assad years ago, in which I asked him about why the reform movement was not moving forward more rapidly under his leadership. He came in as a young reformist president. Yeah. And he told me that the first steps have to be administrative reforms. He's always had this penchant for step-by-step incremental, and I think that is proving to be a huge hindrance in leading this transition. And as President Obama has said, either he leads this political transition or he should step aside, and that is the key issue.
Edward Djerejian, the former U.S. ambassador to Syria, as well as a former American ambassador to Israel. Thanks so much for joining us from Houston.
My pleasure.